Welcome to the Pittsburgh Nerd podcast vlog. I'm Sean. I'm your host, and this is the episode, the show, the day, whatever. I don't know, but this is the day where we talk about like stuff that we missed on the show this past week. What I do, what our process is, if you will, is I will scour the internet as I raise this up a little bit to get my hat in there. I will scour the internet all week looking for stories for us to talk about on the show. And then when I get to the show, many times, we won't even get to what I pulled, which is what happened this week. So a couple of things to talk about here that we did not get to on the show, which I thought were actually pretty interesting. Particularly this story for me is the CW has approved a reboot of the 90s sci-fi classic Babylon 5, and it will be headed by the original creator, Joe Michael Stansky, which is very exciting to me. I love Babylon 5. I just recently rewatched Babylon 5. For those of you who do listen to our podcast, I recently rewatched Babylon 5 in its entirety on HBO Max. And I talked about how, while the special effects don't hold up at all, for the most part. I think the makeup does. The makeup still looks very good, but the special effects and a lot of the green screen stuff that they do doesn't hold up because it's, it looks like it was done on a Commodore Amiga. The stories do. It tells a fantastic story over the first 4 seasons and the 5th season, which, kind of like, I'm not going to get into it all, but anyway, it tells a very good story. It's a grandiose arc. It's definitely what I would refer to as a space opera in many ways. It's a show I really enjoyed back then. I hadn't watched it in 30 years or 25 years. I came back to it, and I still really enjoyed the show. And it excites me that they're rebooting this. Stansky has said he wants to tell the story, but tell it in a different way. We're not looking to, do the exact same thing. I think the show will be familiar to those of us who are a fan of the show, but there will definitely be some differences in the show. I look forward to it. I think Babylon 5, I would encourage you to watch Babylon 5. Forgive it for the special effects, especially the computer-generated effects, a lot of the background stuff because of the green screens and stuff like that. Forgive it for that. But enjoy the story, because the story is what's really the most important thing. And I'm looking forward to, I remember when Battlestar Galactica got rebooted, I was anti the reboot, especially changing Starbuck from a man to a woman. This is horrible. This is gonna suck. And I watched with hatred in my heart that the miniseries, the opening miniseries that they did, and I was turned. Like, it was amazing. It was absolutely so well done, and that show is so well done. And I hate to point at Battlestar Galactica and say, well, this is what you can do with a reboot. But there is a part of me that's saying, like, especially with Stansky being involved with the reboot, this is his baby. This was his creation back then, and he's involved with it now. And he has a story that he wants to tell. It excites me a lot, and I can't wait to see what they do. My only hope is that they don't go down the route that the DC Comics CW shows have, where it's so CW. There's people in love. It's Barry doesn't tell us all of his secrets. Oliver doesn't tell us all of his secrets. It was like the same stuff over and over and over again. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but it seems like to be a CW trope, especially with those DC Comics shows. That I hope it doesn't fall down that well. But overall, I am excited for the show. I can't wait to see what they do. I'm intrigued to see what the redesigns are for some of the ships. The Star Furies had a very, very cool kind of X-Wing fighter look, but it wasn't an X-Wing fighter. They actually adhered to physics a lot of times, like especially with the Star Furies, with the way they turned and the way they maneuvered, the way so there was a lot of interesting stuff involved with that. I think they got an award for how they portrayed the physics of space with the ships and stuff. So that's kind of interesting. So I'm intrigued to see what they do there, how they redesign stuff, because people love to redesign stuff. But I'm also interested to see how they tell the story. So that has me really, really, really excited. Also, it came out this week that the head of Warner Brothers talked about there may have been a failure on Warner Brothers' end with how they handled the 2021 slate of movies, as far as everything that was involved with the release on HBO Max for Warner Brothers. Now, this is something we've talked about on the podcast a lot. The streaming wars are very interesting to me because everybody wants a piece of this pie that Netflix created. Don't blame them. I would too. The major difference is, so how do you differentiate yourself from everybody else? You've got all these streaming services. There's a ton of them out there, but I mean, you've got the big ones. You've got Netflix, Amazon, HBO Max, Peacock, Disney Plus, Hulu. Like, these are the big six. And then you've got all these others, these smaller ones that are out there as well. But those are the big ones. Those are the big guns. And how do you differentiate yourself? Well, one of the ways that HBO Max differentiated itself was by, we're going to offer, our 2021 slate of movies same days in theaters. And the reason for that was because we're in the middle of a pandemic, in all honesty, and they didn't see where an end could be coming. And you have all of these movies, you had all these 2020 movies that didn't get released that are being moved to 2021, that you're reshuffling the deck a lot here. And to me, it just made sense. Like, this is something that, if you can't get your return in a theater, then you're going to go ahead and let's use our platform, our streaming service. Let's see if we can't boost people subscribing to said streaming service to get them to watch our movies. I understand that. Now that we're post-pandemic, movies are slowly starting to make the comeback. Shang-Chi did very well. A couple of others have done very, very well. So, but Warner Brothers movies are suffering at the box office because you can see them at home. And in all honesty, people prefer to see them at home. I get that. I really do. So it's one of those things where they, like, the thing that he talked about is, like, he should have worked with the principals. He should have worked with the production companies. They should have worked with everybody that was involved in those movies, especially people at back-end deals, because they ended up paying out a lot of money about this, and so they should have did a better job of communicating with their partners on how this was all going to go down. I think that's their biggest issue. I think other people were looking at it as a lot like the Suicide Squad. That was a great movie. I did not see it in the theater. I watched it at home. A lot of other people did. If you look at the box office take on the Suicide Squad, it is a flop of epic proportions. But the thing you don't know is how well did it do on streaming. Because it seemed to get a lot of talk, a lot of buzz. People talked about it on the internet. So my thinking is, their streaming numbers were much better than their in-theater numbers. And, while a guy like James Gunn, I don't know what his ego is like. I'm sure there's a part of him that wants the box office to be high. And yet here he is with a very low box office because of the fact that it was released as a streaming movie at the same day. And again, one of the movies we've talked about that's near and dear to my heart is Dune. I plan on seeing Dune in the theater. I have the day off to go see Dune in the theater on Friday. Then I'm going to watch it as streaming on Saturday. So yes, there's a part of me that I feel like I need to see that movie on that big screen, and I want to. But again, is Dune going to be hurt by the streaming numbers? And Warner Bros. Has come out and said if the streaming numbers are good, then we'll do part 2. So, it's one of those things where they kind of hold all the cards. Now, I think at the end of the day, you have to find a way to differentiate yourself. You have to find a way to find what makes your streaming service the one worth getting. Now, many of us are subscribing to all of them. I am. But at the same time, it's one of those deals where Warner Brothers took a chance on something based upon, one, the pandemic, and two, this platform that at the time was floundering and may still be not doing as well as they hope. But when they released HBO Max, it was not doing well at all. So the Wonder Woman 1984 thing was a big deal for them, and then for them to go that whole route for the rest of 2021 was also huge. So it's a matter of if you're how do you differentiate yourself in these streaming wars? Peacock has gone ahead and gotten the WWE network. They've paid $1 billion to Vince McMahon for the WWE network. So they are now the home of all things WWE. You want to watch a WWE pay-per-view? Subscribe to Peacock. It's the best way to get it. That's their deal. That's how they're trying to bump up their subscriptions. Hulu has 101 advantages. With so much of their premium content, their in-house content, stuff that they get, like Why the Last Man, and so much other stuff that they have that nobody else has. Same thing with Amazon. Amazon has their own in-house productions. When you talk about stuff like The Boys, this is stuff that they produced in-house. This is so this is how they differentiate themselves. Same thing with Netflix. Netflix is the OG. And you talk about shows like Lost in Space and Stranger Things and Tiger King, and it's so this is what Warner Brothers did to differentiate themselves, and it's kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. And I think at the end of the day, they're going to have to find some other way, because streaming is going to be the way. Don't get me wrong, and maybe you're going to see a lot more stuff that is same day as in theater. I think they're going to pick and choose a little bit more, but I think tent poles are still going to be, we're going to release that in theater only. James Bond has come out, only in theaters. I mean, that was a big deal with that, with how they're promoting that movie. It's only available in theaters. You can't stream it anywhere. That's what they're saying. So I think there's going to be a point where, as a streaming service, maybe you take a comedy and you make it same day. You take a smaller film, you make it same day. You take a tent pole, like Kong versus Godzilla as an example. That is theater only. Cats. So, I think the streaming wars are far from over. I think Warner Brothers, yes, they made some mistakes in how they handled 2021. But I think going forward, they're going to be looking for ways to make all of that work. Because these streaming services are a major, major investment for all of these companies. And they've got to find ways to get you and me to watch. Two last tidbits, real quick. The hat. SA, South Allegheny High School. I went to South Allegheny High School class of 1991. I'm old. I know. I was a high school football player. Didn't go any further than that, but I played high school football at South Allegheny. The stadium that I played high school football in is being torn down. They're currently building a new multi-sport facility up at the high school now, which is bittersweet, but also well overdue. You know, the stadium I played in was built, I think, in the 30s. So it was old when I played in it. It's one of those situations, though, that you know, they're tearing it down. The homecoming is this weekend. I know there were a lot of former players that were going to be there. They were going to do a whole thing with you being in the locker room and with the team, and you know, they're doing a whole hoodoo, and I think that's phenomenal. I wish I could be there. Unfortunately, I can't. But I am a gladiator through and through, and it's exciting to see that they're moving out of that facility. They're moving to you know, they're gonna have a new facility, a brand new facility. You know, and you know, I wish them nothing but the best. So you know, we are SA. And lastly, one last little tidbit. Last week I talked about how I think Ben Roethlisberger is not the problem. You know, the offensive line is. I still stand by that to a certain extent, but yeah, he made me look stupid this week. He missed a couple of big passes, especially to Juju, that he should have hit. And I'm not saying I still feel like he's better than what he's played at, but at the same time, you know, I'm not calling for his head. You gotta run with him at this point. But at this point, I can see the Steelers having a top 10 pick next year and drafting a linebacker. So that's it for the vlog. Remember, we do have a podcast which you can find on many podcasting apps, including Spotify. We are there. We are going to be doing another live broadcast, recorded live in front of a studio audience from Nerd Corner here in White Oak, Pennsylvania. We'll be doing that on October 16th. I'll be there around 4:30. We begin recording around 5. We'll go out to have a bite to eat and some drinks afterwards. But would love to have, if you're in the area, if you're somebody who lives in the Pittsburgh area, and you want to make the drive over, we would greatly appreciate and love seeing you. That's again October 16th. I'll be talking about it there, and also, you know, we talk about it on the podcast. And that's it. If you liked what you heard, my ramblings here, hit the like and subscribe button. Greatly appreciate that. And on that note, the dreamer has awakened.